In the Trump assassination attempt, it's increasingly looking like they let it happen. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Chris Martinson. It is, looks like, it's the 15th of July. This is a scouting report. And was that hyperbole that they let it happen? No, it's not just me saying that. This is explosive. People, this next thing, friends, colleagues, Romans, countrymen, you have to listen to this next thing. Not just for what it says, because it says something very, very clear, but who is saying it. And we have to then speculate in terms of what this actually means. I'm talking about this. This is from NBC News. Listen in.
That the roof where the shooter was located was a well-known, high-priority vulnerability. It was identified just the day before during a security walkthrough. We've also just learned that there were 2 counter-sniper teams on site and that the counter-sniper did not need approval to shoot. One source telling NBC News that prior protocols were not followed. That the roof where the shooter was located was a well-known, high-priority.
What? Protocols weren't followed. Obvious follow-up question. Why weren't they followed? Whose command was that not to follow those protocols? Obviously, so I did a big 2-hour-long live cast with Evie yesterday. You can find that on our live channel here at Peak Prosperity's YouTube channel, also at Peak Prosperity, the website. Look, and by the way, I ran through everything. Sort of posterity's sake, I did what I do best. I'm an information scout. I sifted through hundreds and hundreds of hours of material in a very short amount of time, condensed it, and somehow got it all together. It was like hundreds of slides, actually, but I was on it for like 24 hours straight. Anyway, this is a big, fast-breaking thing, but look at the implication of this. We have mainstream news openly hinting at something, which is that this was allowed to happen because there are inexplicable, meaning can't explain them, lapses in the security protocol. Obviously, any third-grade class could have figured that out. There were only like 2 roofs in the place, and as we're going to find out in just a second, there was also a water tower there. The most obvious glaring security possible. And as we discussed yesterday, what we saw was that we saw just the 2 snipers on the roof who had the shooter in their sights and let the shooter get 5 to 6 shots off, probably 5, I think, maybe 6. Hard to say from this auditory sounds, before they returned fire and killed him right away. And that there was this inexplicable 2-minute gap while that guy was crawling around on the roof, and people are filming it and they're yelling and they're trying to get attention. And so we have to talk about this because it's really, really a bizarre situation. By the way, as an aside, we have to talk about this too, which is there was an immediate attempt by AP. Of course, AP is all things disinformation come from us from AP. They are our fact checkers in this particular story. Here, let me pull this up full screen. This is horrifying that they did this. So they came up the day after, and here's what they said about that shooter on the roof. They said one local police officer climbed to the roof and encountered Crooks, the shooter, who pointed his rifle at the officer. The officer retreated down the ladder, and Crooks quickly took a shot towards Trump. And that's when Secret Service snipers shot him, said officials. Okay, this is complete fiction. This is lies, complete lies. And they're lies to anybody who has ears or eyes, or both preferably, who could have watched any of the tape, which is abundant, from that shooting, which clearly shows that there was a first shot. That went to Trump's ear. The first shot was the most well-aimed one. That was the careful one. Missed just literally by an inch of taking his life. He grabs his ear, falls down. Then you hear another shot, and then another, and then rapid fire, I think 3 or 4, and then the counter shot. So there was a whole span of time there where these shots, it wasn't like he quickly took a shot and then was sniped. That's not what happened. This is a fiction. And of course, the AP knows that. So the AP, you are now on triple secret probation for being lying sacks in this whole overall story. Do not like how you roll. And I don't like people who lie to me. And you are on the wrong side of history completely. And everybody involved in penning fiction like this deserves at a minimum to lose their job. But I actually think this is anti-patriotic, anti-American, anti-everything. This is anti-life. This is wrong. This is wrong, and we should decide together what the penalties should be for lying this comprehensively, when all you have to do is watch the tape and know that this is a lie. No, he didn't quickly take a shot and then was taken out by the snipers. That is not what happened. Okay, So with that said, let's move on because this gets really bizarre here. So let me just change screens here because I got to get to this other part. So again, let's just listen to this one more time. It's just less than a half a minute because this is really vital. What just happened here? That this is on NBC is a big deal.
That the roof where the shooter was located was a well-known, high-priority vulnerability. It was identified just the day before during a security walkthrough. We've also just learned that there were 2 counter-sniper teams on site and that the counter-sniper did not need approval to shoot. One source telling NBC News that prior protocols were not followed.
Okay. So again, think about what this opens up. This opens up the idea that the Secret Service let this happen. This opens up the idea of who has the authority, or how could it be possible that the Secret Service would be in a position where they would let this happen? What happened to the other local law enforcement whose job it was allegedly? Well, let's look at that. Let's take a look at this. Because as Chief Nerd put up here, and Chief Nerd does great stuff on Twitter in terms of reporting, the New York Post here has this thing where the Secret Service is blaming local police, saying that they were tasked with securing properties surrounding Trump's rally. And we're going to see that just how absolutely false that actually is. I mean, they may try and say that's true, but when you look at the overall details of the plot of land, you will find out what a complete monstrous lie this is. So the Secret Service definitely has a problem right now. There's something very, very wrong here. Obviously, the FBI is in no position to actually do anything because the FBI, like, they botched Hunter's laptop and they raided safe deposit boxes in LA and stole a bunch of private citizens' money and never gave it back. And, you know, they couldn't figure out, they raided Mar-a-Lago with lethal force, you know, applied as a rule of engagement. On and on and on. Obviously, the FBI, there may be good FBI agents who work at the FBI, but as an institution, it is utterly corrupt, right? I might be able to say I can find good people who work at Pfizer, but as a company, that thing is a POS, right? So let's separate good people might work there from the fact that they work for a completely corrupt, derelict organization. And that's what the FBI has become, obviously. And we all know that. So here it says the Secret Service blamed local police for failing to secure the rooftop from which gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate former President Donald Trump, insisting it was outside of the perimeter the federal agency was tasked with protecting. 140 yards is outside your perimeter? Get the F out of here. This is crazy. So who is this? This is Anthony Guglielmi here saying this is a Secret Service representative. It said, according to the New York Times. So he's going to the official state-approved cover-up aluminum tubes, highly derelict New York Times, who nobody should subscribe to because, listen, fake news like they print really ought to be free. I mean, propaganda posters, you shouldn't have to pay for the propaganda posters. Should totally be free. At any rate, let's turn now to this gentleman here. This comes from Liz Churchill. I found this. He said here, I spent 14 years as a sniper, and yesterday what happened, I have no doubt in my mind that the shooter had help from somewhere within an agency, organization, or the government. Okay, let's listen to this gentleman because he's going to spot first minute. He's just telling you his creds. You can search them. The guy looks real to me. I don't have any way of knowing if he was actually in the unit he said he was in, but I don't have any reason to doubt that. But what he says is absolutely true.
Asked about this, so I'm just going to let you know my opinion. I am talking about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And I know everyone's going to have some crazy opinion. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. It's going to be very wild for the next little while. But just if you don't know me or are new to this page, I spent just about 17 years in the military, just about 14 of which were at Tier 1 Special Operations Unit called JTF-2. Our sniper team has the world record for the longest confirmed sniper kill. And a huge part of our job while I was there and while I was a sniper was doing close protection for VIPs up to and including the Prime Minister when he would go to dangerous countries like Iraq or Afghanistan. We would be in charge of that security. So I'm very familiar with the layout of these types of things and what the jobs should be. And yesterday, what happened I have no doubts in my mind that the shooter had help from somewhere within an agency, an organization, or the government. The second I saw that aerial photo of what they were saying happened, it immediately made no sense to me. You cannot, in broad daylight, get onto a rooftop within, it looked like maybe a couple hundred yards, if that. You can't get into that position with a gun when there's a president speaking. It cannot be done. It's not like, you don't even need to be a sniper to know that it's the most fucking obvious thing, an obvious place in the whole world. You could be a 7th grader, like, what do we need to do for security here? Well, let's look at these rooftops that are almost within zeroing range of a rifle.
Almost within zeroing range of a rifle. Absolutely. It goes on from there, but this is absolutely the case. So let's look at the layout again very quickly. So imagine that this shooter, Thomas Crooks, right? He has to park his car somewhere. He has to walk from the car, right? Has to somehow get up on this roof, and it's a white roof, and he's wearing dark clothes, so he will stand out, right? Like a tomato on a white sand beach, right? It just couldn't be more obvious. Like, oh, there's something there, right? In a spot that's well within, like he just said, it's in zeroing range, meaning this is where you bring a rifle that you just need to sight in, and you need a short range so that you can begin to zero it in, right? This is like for a quality sniper, this is a layup. This is a 1-foot putt, right? I mean, literally. So equivalent. So there's that. Now let's go back to this, because this is really important to actually look through here. I like how this was put here by Amuse here. It says, before blaming Secret Service for a security failure, you need to realize that the building where the shooter was located was outside of the Pac-Man security bubble. Drew Pac-Man, like that's the security perimeter right there. Okay, so let me show you something here as well. Get rid of that. So this is the site. This here is the roof right here where the counter snipers were. At least one of the counter sniper teams was located here. I don't know where the other one was, right? Here's where the shooter was, on top of this white roof. And Trump was right here, okay? Now, I need to point out one other feature in this, which needs to be talked about, which is this water tower, which provides perfect, comprehensive 360-degree stationary coverage of the entire scene. If there wasn't a counter sniper team up on that water tower, which has, by the way, we can see it in the other, pull this picture up. You can see here, hopefully there's stairs that go up to the top of this water tower. I think this picture gives us a little better view. It provides perfect coverage of all of this. It's higher than these rooftops by a lot, obviously. And so that's the most obvious spot. Like if your first time out of the box paintball team got together and you had to secure this spot and you didn't end up putting somebody on top of that water tower, you sucked as a paintball team. Obviously, this is not even like Sniper 101. Like, you don't even need to be a 7th grader or a 3rd grader. This is just like, we're expected to believe the official story, which was, oh yeah, local police were in charge of that roof right there. And even if that was the case, obviously, and you saw that you had tasked the local police with that as the Secret Service, and you saw that they didn't have somebody up on that roof, right? How does that even happen? So obviously it's a stupid story. It's completely obviously false. This whole idea that, oh, this was just a security malfunction somehow. It was a goof. They happen. No, goofs like this do not happen. This is just so completely obvious. So you probably haven't heard a lot about the water tower, but you really should be hearing more about the water tower, because it's like right there. It's right there. And it covers the whole area. And if you wanted to put snipers anywhere, or at least a spotter, somebody up there with a pair of good radio and a pair of binoculars, you'd put them right there. Yeah, I'd put them right there on the water tower, right there. Okay, so it didn't happen. And it didn't happen because, as NBC is now saying, they didn't follow protocols. And this roof had already been identified as a high priority vulnerability. And there was a ladder going up. And can we talk about this just a little bit here? So Shawn Davis posted here, by the way, it's not just that shooter got up there. It's that he was there for a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, It's a really long time, 2 minutes, right? If we all decided we were going to hold our breath together, and by the way, during those 2 minutes, there's people filming him. Multiple people are trying to get the police attention, Secret Service attention, saying there's a dude up there with a rifle. At a minimum, that ought to have led to a radio dispatch, and Trump should have been hustled off the stage. We also saw yesterday in the longer piece I did that there were 2 counter snipers that we did have a visual on in terms of a video, glassing this guy, looking at him, right? And seeing him through their scopes for 42 seconds. Again, no urgency to radio, call down, get Trump off the stage. So none of that is consistent with protocol. None of that's consistent with not being a complete security moron. And this is actually can't be explained any other. And here's how it is. It's this simple. Until they can prove to me this was a colossal F-up, the simplest explanation is that this was a setup, which means that we have a deeper problem we have to talk about, which means that there are elements within the government in official positions who are busy trying to assassinate presidents. But I don't know. We just came through COVID where they hurt a lot of people, and they continue to with their CDC guidance for 6 months on up should get this magic holy thing, which does nothing in terms of health and does a lot in terms of making people ill and sick and dead and with cancer and stuff like that. So that's the system we have to talk about. It just got revealed. It's there for your lying eyes to believe, right? Just watch for yourself and understand what just happened. So here's an explanation potentially from Shawn Davis. He says, quote, pretty crazy, how an assassin was given a free shot at Donald Trump, or 5 or 6 free shots, after Biden's debate collapse, but right before Donald Trump announced his VP and was formally nominated as the GOP presidential candidate. It's almost as if the whole thing was engineered, not just to eliminate Trump, but to require an entirely new ticket free of any Trump influence whatsoever. And then it just so happened the shooter is the only person in the entire country without any social media or online footprint whatsoever, and the FBI, after whole minutes of effort, just couldn't figure out how to crack his phone. What a series of very strange coincidences. Well, even Roosevelt said, in politics, if it happened, you can be sure it didn't happen by accident. There are no coincidences in these sorts of stories. So this is a lot to wrap our minds around, but for NBC to be openly telling us that the fact patterns are not consistent with anything other than, well, I'm interpreting a little bit what they're saying, but the only possible reasonable non-moron interpretation of what they just said is somebody let this happen. And so that is a really big deal, and I fear for what's going to happen next. I do worry that the people who would be so reckless as to try something like that would also be reckless enough to try and take our attention off of that matter by doing something even more reckless, right? We're all worried about it. Are they going to fire a war off, another false flag attack? You know, are they going to do 9/11 again, something kind of like that, only this time with more TV cameras and more deaths? Who knows? But that's the country we live in right now in the United States, and we have to open our eyes to that. At a minimum, what you also need to do is understand that the chance of this getting really hinky, right, things getting really chaotic and disruptive, means you really should be doing what you can to get prepared as much as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn now to my subscribers at Peak Prosperity. We got a lot more to talk about. I got much more in today's scouting report. This is going to be a really, really thick week of stuff. I have so much stuff on the cutting room floor. I hardly know where I'm going to get to it all, but we got to get to it somehow. So come on back to Peak Prosperity if you're a subscriber. This is going to be a deep one. But everybody else, thanks so much for listening. And check out that 2-hour live cast if you want. It's on the live channel on YouTube. It's also at Peak Prosperity that lays out all the basics. I put it down just like I did on January 23rd, 2020, when I laid out my first COVID thesis. It wasn't COVID, it was just coronavirus at the time. But I like to take these snapshots early because that way I have a placeholder, and then you can decide, hey, was that useful information scouting? Was it more right than not? And take it from there. All right, until next time, thanks everybody, and please think carefully what it means that NBC, a mainstream media, is openly hinting at what we all suspect actually happened. It's a big deal. All right, till next time, bye.